Hi, welcome back to Lakeside Quilt Making Arts. While that iron gets hot, I'll fill you in on what's going on. Since this video is being released on Tuesday, it's our more technical content. Nothing super nerdy, nothing like that. Just try to cover some of the more technical things that I'm exploring. This is a vlog style video channel, YouTube channel, and I welcome you into my life. I'm being super vulnerable about my quilting journey, what I don't know, what I'd like to learn, all those kinds of things. So what I've done this morning is I've kind of explored a little bit into EQuilter, trying to just get familiar with how to set up a quilt, try to set the height and width of the blocks, whether or not there's any sashing, how many borders, the style of that border, how to place fabric, how to place your blocks into that setting, those kinds of things. Just getting familiar with how to navigate inside the system. It's that first step that tends to be the hardest hurdle, right? At least it is for me. I'm pretty proficient with a couple of different pieces of software, Excel and, some others, and QuickBooks, just a lot of different things that are intuitive. But I was kind of intimidated by EQuilter because it was brand new. I don't know. It was brand new to me. And I don't know how intuitive it is. I don't know how cumbersome it might be, but it's great. I'm not finding any problem with it whatsoever. I did buy the books for going through some self-study, and that's working out great. I'm the type, I read a little bit, it tells me to do something, and then I start asking questions and I start moving ahead. And then I have to tell myself to backtrack and go back to the book and, keep course with it, because there are details in there that I would be overlooking if I just jump ahead. I'm not going to tell you I'm not jumping ahead. I'm going to jump ahead, but I am trying to also be a good student and go backwards too. So the other thing that I did was I went ahead and put together another little design board so I could transfer my unicorn quilt over to the sewing table. I didn't have enough. I had one that was already in use and it was setting by the machine, so I didn't want to take things off of it. And I've seen other people, particularly Pat Sloan and Kimberly Jolly, and I think Lori Holt too. I just don't remember seeing her doing it, but I know she sells her own little design boards, so I'm sure she does it too. But people just stack, like they have one project on one and then another project on top of another board, and they just have them all stacked up. That makes a lot of sense because these things work great. They really do. All I did with mine is, you can see where I'm putting it together. I bought some foam board in order to put a puzzle together last year, and it was kind of cheaper for me to buy, like, I don't remember how many, but it was a big boards, and it was like a big box of them. And that way I could put my puzzle on it, and then I could glue my puzzle onto it to hang it up, because I had a couple that were kind of meaningful, and so I wanted to hang them up. So I had some leftover board, and I decided that would be great for creating design boards. So I just went ahead and whipped one together. I used my painter's tape and a couple of pins to keep it stable while I'm getting it in place, and because that painter's tape is much easier to work with. And then I use my duct tape to get it nice and secure. Nothing fancy, nice and simple, but it was quick and it works, which is great. So then I transferred my unicorn quilt over to it looks good. That's the first time I've seen it like that. I haven't ironed it yet, of course. So I transferred it to the sewing machine and sewed that together. And then I shared some tips. I'll show that video right here. And then I'll come back and meet you. I'm going to be ironing this while you watch me talk about the magic pins. Magic pins. To sew these strips back together, I want to make sure that all of my seams are going to line up properly. So I know I'm going to sew this direction. So I'm pinning the front part of my seam. If I cared even more about this quilt, I would pin right up against that seam on both sides. I think I'll be fine handling it this way. They're pressed open. They want to fall flat. they want to fall into where they're supposed to be. So but the thing I wanted to show was how awesome these little magic pins. These are the extra fine, and I don't remember the number on the extra fine. I want to say a 0.4 or 0.04, where their fine is the next step up from that. But I go in, I'm holding it firmly with my fingers, and I'm going in, kind of starting at a direct angle just to get it started, and I'm quickly angling it. Instead of going in way deep and then turning, so I'm getting my needle through. It's got a slight angle on it, not much, and then come back. Okay, with this kind of pin, you can do that. But if you try to do that with a bigger pin, now this is a really big one. I call these my nails. You do that and then you try to turn it, you're contorting your fabric too much. It's pushing the fabric around instead of gliding inside of it. So there's a lot of advantage to using these little magic pins. Even for my finger grip, which is poor, I can hold on to it fairly well. It'd be great if it had a bigger head, but at least it has a grip on it, and it's not just a little ball that like you see so much. So if you really cared super duper about this, you'd start with a pin to go into the seam at your 1/4 inch away from the edge of the fabric. Make sure it comes out the back side at that 1/4 of an inch. And that one is going in at a right angle. And then you come in, that's your stabilizing pin. You're holding that in place with the fabrics, keeping that pin at a perpendicular when you put these 2 pins in on either side of that seam allowance. Then you can take out the stabilizing pin. Technically, that's what I should do, but I think I'm fine. I'm not going to with this one. This is a unicorn quilt, not a show quilt. So you just, as the needle of the machine comes closer to it, you wait till it's right there at it, and then you pull it apart. Best way to protect your seams. We'll sew this one together, and I'll show you what it looks like, and then I'll sit here and zip through the rest of it. It is so nice to be able to sew a proper 1/4 inch seam now instead of the scant 1/4 inch that the blockheads requires. The other thing it does to have that pin right there is it makes sure that when the seam allowance hits any of these lips, any of these different levels, it doesn't get pushed back the wrong way. I'm gonna just get this one started. So I can get the other one off of the machine. How's it look? Is everything lining up? Looks pretty good to me. Alrighty, that's one of them. It goes on the right hand side, so I'm going to lay it down there and get the rest of this done. The other thing I want to point out is that you want to have your pins perpendicular to your fabric. Now, no one's going to take a right angle tool to them to double check, but the more right angle they are, straight up and down they are, the less risk you have of pulling your fabrics away from your seams matching up. If you have them at a diagonal, any at all, if it goes in right where it should, but then it crosses over and comes out the other way, you're increasing your chance of pulling away from your seam. As I'm chain piecing, I like to take the run of seams before the current one, take them off and lay them on the design board next to me, just so I don't get things confused, because there's not a lot of discernment between these different strips, and I've already thought through their placement once. I don't want to do it again. So I'm taking it off. There's one on the machine already, taking this one off and putting it next to the ones beside it. Okay, and this one's on there. I'll pin this together, and as I get it in there, I can take this one off and set it right there. Perfect timing. I got the inside of the unicorn quilt all pressed, and I started pressing from the front side just to make sure everything's lying nice and flat. Oh, I meant to mention this the other day. If you've ever done any DIY projects, you too may have some leftover flooring samples. So I had a board full of samples, and these are the ones that just fell off on their own. One of them, two of them, still has a little bit of glue on it where it was attached to the board, and I haven't cleaned that up. I haven't bothered to because it's pretty well stuck on there. That side I don't put down on my fabric. I put this flat side down, and I know that that's got some kind of finish on it, but it's not affecting any of my fabric, so I feel pretty comfortable using it. It's a nice large area. It's got enough weight. I don't think it's about having a lot of weight. You want it to lie flat while it dries. And as long as this is heavier than the fabric underneath it, you don't have to have multiples of these. You just need something that absorbs the heat so that it will, so that seam will lose its heat, dry, cool off while it's flared open the way you want it. So it will remain nice and flat. So if for all those newbie people out there that are wondering, do I need to go out and buy a bunch of these? These are beautiful. They really are. I enjoy handling it. Like, it's got a good grip. It feels good in the hand. It's pretty. But I found this in my garage. It was 4 years old. At one point, I considered tossing it because the design house where I got the flooring didn't want it back. I'm so glad I didn't. So I'm almost there with this. I want to show you what I'm doing. Did you enjoy that lesson about the magic pins? I saw Kimberly Jolly talk about how to use pins one day and last year, and it was like, oh, thank you, Kimberly. It really resonated. So every time I use those pins, I think of her. And I will put it on the screen, the particular type those are. Like I said, it's extra fine. And I've got 0.4 in my head, could be 0.04. 0.04 sounds small, and that's probably what it is. But the biggest thing you're looking for is that you're not pushing the fabric around, you're sliding in between the fabric without contorting or distorting your fabric. What I did today, well, the other day I sliced it, and then I mixed it up so that I could get, when I would put everything back together, it wasn't going to just look like it was sewn right back how it was. I wanted some of the strips to be turned upside down and some moved around so that you didn't get any of the fabrics touching each other. All right, so that's what I've done. What I'm going to do next is the exact same thing, rinse and repeat, but I'm going to go horizontal this time instead of vertical. And that's going to end up with a much smaller quilt. For each seam that I create, I'll be losing ½ inch, right? So this will get much smaller. It got much smaller this direction. How many did we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So 15 is 7½ inches. It shrunk by 7.5 inches. So let's look what, I'm gonna go get that unicorn so I can leave the camera and everything where it is. I'm gonna get my unicorn and put on this. Last week I started piecing together more of the squares, the last bits of these squares that I have, because I knew that my quilt would shrink and I want it to be about the size that it was. So I knew I would have to put more back onto it. I don't know that I had enough of the squares left to make enough additional fabric to grow this back out to the size I need it. So I may have to get creative and add a little border or something along those lines. We'll see. But first, before I shrink it this direction, I want to see how my unicorn fits on this widthwise. I decided to go ahead and turn you around here. For the design board, all I had to do was flip the cameras and the lights. I feel trapped back here though, so I was trying not to get back here in this little corner. This is our quilt, and I just did the math on this, that we created 15 seams, which means that we shrunk 1/2 inch for each one of those. So 7.5 inches is how much it's shrunk from left to right. And we're about to create 10 different seams vertically, so it's going to lose 5 inches. And this is our unicorn that I want to put on it. And I like the size of my unicorn, so I want the size of my miniature quilt to fit my unicorn. I just like the size. Sure, I could redraw the unicorn, but that's not what I want to do. I'm kind of married to the size of it. So right there is the outside edges of the miniature quilt. And that won't be changing. That's our width. That's a given. We're not going to go any smaller than that. But vertically, we're going to lose 5 inches. And that's 5 inches right there. Can you see that? Top of that right there is 5 inches. So right through there. So I'm going to need to add back all the way around, and may have to add more to the vertical height versus the width. We'll see whenever we get it done. But the next step is to kind of do a rinse and repeat of what we just did. I'm going to come in and slice all the way down, and then mix and match things so that they're not just being sewn right back up against themselves. So I believe what we decided is we're going to be left with 3/4 inch squares. And that's going to be much more suitable for a miniature quilt, for a miniature unicorn, stuffed unicorn. Love these imaginary worlds that the people I love get me into. I mentioned the leaders and enders I had been working on last week, and these are all that I had left. They're all sewn together, and I haven't even counted them. Actually, these are not sewn together, so that's another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and there's one over there on the table, 7. Seems like an odd number. Is there 2? There's 2 over there. Okay, 8. So I'd be able to create 4 more of these doubles and then piece it together. It won't add a whole lot. I'm going to have to get creative. It might just be that I was thinking about putting a little white border around the whole thing. So, and like we just said, we're going to need more vertical height added versus width. So when I get it all chopped up and sewn back together, then I will reevaluate and see where we are. It might be that I just add these to the bottom, and then of course I'm going to have to do the same treatment to these. Put them together, slice it vertically, reattach, slice it horizontally, and mix them up and then reattach, and then see where we are there. I'm just married to the size of that unicorn. I like it, but the scale of the fabric underneath it needed to suit. There's just a difference in having a quilt that has blocks, units in it that are this size versus 24 inches. Very modern, but it can be fine. And no one else probably would have noticed, right? They would say, oh, that's out of scale. That's okay. I would notice, and that's why I do these things, because I notice these things. I'm going to get this ready to do my slicing and dicing. Go all the way across. You start in the middle, go all the way across. What do I have? I have 2-inch squares. So cut it at 1 all the way around. And what I did last time is I left them all in place so I wouldn't forget the order. And once I got them all cut, then I will take it and rearrange it. Wasn't sure if this was going to be long enough. It's not quite long enough. It'd feel better having this one. By the way, when I went to get this one, I realized I'd put it in its old home instead of up on the pegboard. I'm going to have to get used to that being where it belongs. You see this ball of yarn over here? I'm thinking about incorporating some of my yarns to couch it down as part of the line drawing of the unicorn. Don't know. We'll see. We're not at that point yet. Put my weight up here. There we go. So my black line is on that seam. Just a little bit of fudge right here. It's not going to matter. It's really small, but I'm going to, yeah, there and there. Those little differences can make a difference over the course of the quilt. So that's 1 inch, right? That's what we said. Yes. Ah, it moved on me. Okay. Not going to be the end of the world. Okay. So it's going to be off by about 1/16 of an inch. I think I can survive that big of a grievance. Hold this in line. I'm going to get another weight over here and use 2 of them. Much better. Okay. See how I don't want to just line those back up together like that? So what I'll probably end up doing is coming in and flipping. Well, since this was on the edge, I'm actually going to be aware of that, and I'm going to put it on the opposite side. But after I get another one of these done over here, then I will take one of them and flip it. And if that creates a point where any of the fabrics match, then I move it down the line a little bit before I piece it together. Okay. The weights are just so valuable for me. I know everybody probably has a problem with their fabric shifting and their ruler shifting, but I think I have a huge problem with it. All of my joints move. It's called subluxation. They move inside the joint space whenever I'm walking or using my hands, whatever. And as I'm correcting for that, I can accidentally move the ruler and things shift, and so the weights are really helpful for me. Yay. See, instead of just sewing those back together, I might do something like that. That'd be fine. I like that a lot. I'm just going to do that. The only place where two things match up is right here, and that's not a big deal. I'll keep them lined up the way they are and just mix match them that way. That's it for this video. Stay tuned for tomorrow, and we'll see what progress we make on the unicorn quilt. We're going to shrink it a little bit further, and then we're going to start working on the technicalities of sandwiching it, and then getting a unicorn on top of it so we can start thread painting with it. I don't know if you can call it painting if all you're doing is outlining. Should we call it thread sketching maybe? I don't know, but tomorrow we're not going to be doing the comfort and the waiting. I am on a timeline to get this little quilt done because it is a gift that needs to be delivered before the 14th, and today is the 5th. So I want the comfort zone, today's the 4th. I want the comfort zone of a few days just so I don't feel like I'm stressed, so that if I make any mistakes, I can figure out some other gift, that kind of thing. So I feel comfortable that it's going to be fine. I mean, you know, she's going to be excited. If I do a horrible job with the unicorn, she won't care. She just is going to know there's a unicorn that I tried and that I made something for her, and that's great. An almost 5-year-old is a lot. Well, I was about to say an almost 5-year-old is pretty easy to please, but they are not all easy to please. But where it comes to unicorns, she's easy to please. Anything unicorn, anything unicorn. You guys have a great day. Thank you for giving me some of your most valuable time. It really is, you know, I respect it. I really appreciate it. It means a lot to me. Have a great day. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.